the Conservative HQ has been criticised for a targeted campaign against an immigration lawyer. This is Jacqueline McKenzie, the head of immigration at Lee, Day and partner in the firm. Now, what she's gone through has been quite horrific, and the Law Society and Bar Council have hit out at the Conservatives' treatment of an immigration lawyer. She was the subject of a dossier, a secret dossier sent to certain right-leaning newspapers claiming all sorts of things. And this is, and she's had to seek professional help in getting security because it's whipped up a lot of things. Now, let's just make sure that we know who we're talking about. McKenzie, she was part of the Windrush, the whole looking into Windrush, which she said she was asked by Priti Patel. She was part of the Windrush working group, which was set up by Sajid Javid. But now the Tories have criticised her. And in a rare joint statement, Nick Vinyl, is KC, chair of the Bar Council. Vinyl. He said that the legal community was gravely concerned by her treatment, adding, political leaders know that lawyers represent their clients within the legal framework that Parliament creates, and Conservative Central Headquarters should seriously reflect on what happened in this case. They sent out a dirty dossier on this immigration lawyer and are saying that they're allowed to criticise people. We've got to take a break. But when we come back, let's discuss this case. We'll be back in a sec. Welcome back. I'm with Joseph Cottrey Monson. We're about to move on to talking about Jacqueline McKenzie, which I will in just a moment. Joseph, I have to read you out these messages that we've got coming in. Let me just remind people, 0344 499 1000. If you want to call in, you can text the word talk to 87222, or you can tweet or X at TalkTV. A couple of messages. Human Rights Convention. Trisha, please, we can have our own set of human rights, virtually the same, but tweaked re our immigration policy. The current one is being abused. That's one. Let me read the other one straight off because you've got to hear this one. Trisha, Joseph talks with forked tongue. He knows as well as anyone that just because 70% of applicants have been granted asylum has absolutely nothing to do whether X% of current applicants are genuine asylum seekers. And you, Trisha, lap it all up as usual. Somebody put woke. Yes, I am woke because woke means to stand up to racism. So I am woke. That's the only meaning of woke. So yes, I am woke. If you're anti-woke, it means you are pro-racism, using the word correctly. Trisha, why don't you join the BBC? You seem to have the correct woke attitude. Yes, I'm anti-racist. I would have hoped you would be too, Don in Suffolk, or are you misusing the word? Many people do. But let me come back to you, Joseph, with forked tongue.
I don't think you're capable of that, Trisha, by the way.
What's that? Capable of that? Forked tongue. No, they're calling you one with forked tongue. Somebody's, as one message said, we can write our own Bill of Rights, but just tweak it where we want to.
I mean, the reality is that's right. And that's what we've just been talking about. The problem is, right, it would be a case of legal gymnastics to try to write a Bill of Rights that said you had the right not to be tortured unless you're a migrant.
yeah, exactly. And what about this? How many are genuine asylum seekers? We don't know, and surely that's one of the things we've discussed many times on this program.
And that's why we have a process. That's why
that's why we need to speed, and that's why there's the current
if 70% of the people, sorry to talk across you, but if 70% of people are being granted asylum, the suggestion is that a judge who's heard all the facts, who's not on one side or the other, says that they are genuine.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's not even just a judge, because I know someone who did this. They have banks of psychologists who are very, very highly trained and worked with victims of torture and trauma in those original countries, go to those countries, what have you, who have a very, very stiff vetting process. And people say, oh, you can pull the wool over their eyes. You can't. It's very, very difficult to do that. So there's a whole process that I wish they would open up and show people. I mean, I was reading a story of some Africans who escaped by sitting on the back rudder of one of those big tankers for 2 weeks across the ocean. You can't imagine. I mean, the stories are horrific, and you don't do that on, I think I'll just pop across for a bit of a holiday. People who whinge about sitting in the queue to go over to Dover for 2 hours. Anyway, we were going to move on to Jacqueline McKenzie. Now, just to remind people, this is an unprecedented case where the chair of the Bar Council has written to Conservative Central headquarters about releasing, and they only released this dirty dossier on Jacqueline McKenzie, who headed up at the government's request, the Windrush inquiry. They only released it to certain, well, let's say it, to the right newspapers, only certain ones. It was a sneaky dossier, but it means that she's had to step up her security. So, Joseph, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely horrific. The idea that a lawyer in a democracy should be linked to the interests that she represents, as if she is that person. It's it's the first thing that goes in as democracy slips away, as it is in countries like Turkey. The terribly worrying rumblings that are going on in Israel at the moment with regard to the independence of judges, which is a direct attack on democracy, and these are the types of things that, if we value our freedom and we're very jealous about guarding it, the first sign of this we should be paranoid about, because this stuff happens by 1,000 small moves, 1,000 cuts. I have to say this, Braverman et al., they've achieved what Home Secretaries in recent years have struggled to. They've united the barristers' profession and the solicitors against them. They're usually very good at splitting the opposition, because that letter is not just from Nick Vinall Casey, but also Lubna Shuja, who is the president of the Law Society, which represents the interests and concerns of the solicitors' part of the profession. And I have to say, and this follows on from what you just gave us before the break, Trisha, and I was really grateful for this. You were talking about the fact that Jacqueline McKenzie, in fact, she'd been the person they brought in to try and clean up the Windrush stuff. I have to say this, and I thought about whether using this phrase was just too direct. Do you know what, Trisha? Sometimes you just have to tell the truth. Here goes. They were prepared to use her for some racism washing after the shameful hostile environment policy that caused the Windrush scandal. But now, when it doesn't suit them, they're attacking her as they're trying to perpetrate more odious parts, more odious functions of that same hostile environment for the weak and the deserving, in many cases, refugees, not just migrants, mostly refugees who come to our country.
But people, just to remind people, the Windrush, these are people who were asked, like my mum, to come over at the end of the war, to get the National Health Service going, the transport systems going, buildings happening and what have you, because more Britons were leaving. They were begged to come over. They came over, and then the immigration lost a lot of people's paperwork. It was paper, in the old days of paperwork. And then years later said, you're not British because we can't find any of your paperwork, and we're deporting people. So the government asked Jacqueline McKenzie, Sajid David, and Priti Patel, asked her to form this Windrush working group. Incidentally, I didn't realise that more Europeans have used that Windrush deal, more Europeans than Jamaicans and West Indians. Anyway, to fight against the deportation after they've been here all those years, contributed, saved people's lives in the health services, driven them about in buses and tubes and what have you, and then were suddenly told they're not British. All the hundreds of thousands they've given in tax, you're not British. So now as you say, I've got to read this out. The Conservative Party spokesperson said, the idea that lawyers should be exempt from criticism is completely wrong and incompatible with a free society. The Lord Chief Justice, the head of the judiciary of England and Wales, has himself voiced concerns that a minority of lawyers have engaged in vexatious representations and abusive legal challenges to frustrate removals. They're not saying Jacqueline has done this. So they're very clever legally sidestepping that, otherwise they'd be in trouble. The Lord Chief Justice has also previously said that lawyers should, quote, act fearlessly for their clients and, quote, not be subject to criticism for doing so. So they're cherry picking what they did. So I don't understand. The government says, please, please, please help us clean up this mess. She's obviously done it too well. So now they secretly send really nasty stuff, and a lot of it personal stuff, off to certain newspapers to get her back. People need to wake up and see what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're naturally conservative as a profession. Lawyers like order. That's the personality type, because you got to remember lots of facts and lots of processes and stuff like that. For us to be united in alarm, we're not particularly political as a species. Most of us would rather avoid it. I'm not a member of a political party.
But you're a lefty.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go.
That's what they say.
Trisha. Thanks, Trisha.
You're not allowed to. See, if you're not a lefty, you're one of the solicitors that are trying to do a favour because you're trying to make money. Yeah. And if you care about people, then you're a lefty.
I believe in a certain type of morality, and that's really that. As far as the weak are concerned, as far as people without a voice is concerned, everybody should be treated fairly, not easily, but fairly. They've got a right to a voice, and that voice is provided by lawyers, because people don't know the legal language. They don't know how best to articulate themselves. Many people have a case, but not the skill. And the other side, the government, has all the skill, all the resources, all the power. And if you get it wrong, you're in prison, you're deported. You deserve to have an underpaid, usually legal aid lawyer doing their best for you, to speak up for you, even if you're found against, because at least a society knows the right decision was come to. And if you deprive that or turn this into personalities of lawyers, I have to say, with a hint of racism about it. We're better than this, Trisha.
That's been spotted. And just going back to that message where we could write our own Bill of Rights, etc., etc. If you seriously think a government wouldn't try to tweak other things, I don't know which land you're living in, but I want to come and join you.